Ancient Palestine, about 1,000 years before Jesus. The Israelites maintain an uneasy truce with the Philistines, who dominate the land. A troublemaker arises of extraordinary superhuman strength. His name is Samson. His explosive rages disrupt peace in the land. Is he merely a violent man driven by a thirst for adventure and sex? Or does he play a divinely inspired role? Why does Samson's quest for love always end so tragically? Why does he reveal the secret of his strength to Delilah? And why does she betray him? Is it possible that Samson was kept by the Philistines not as a laborer, but as a sex slave, destined to breed a race of giants? And could he really have single-handedly brought down a great temple with pure brute force? These are but a few of the mysteries of the Bible. It is one of the most often repeated tales of the Bible, a story of passion and betrayal. But perhaps of even greater importance is the profound and paradoxical lesson that the story holds. Only when we are blind do we truly see. Samson is a man known for his superhuman strength, until a woman named Delilah cuts his hair and robs him of his might.
She put him to sleep with his head on her lap. She snipped off the 7 braids of his head. Then she began to torment him. His strength had left him. Judges 16:19.
Shortly thereafter, Samson is blinded and cast into abject slavery. He is set to laboring as little more than an animal, until in a final act of divinely inspired strength, he brings down the temple of his tormentors upon them and himself. Is this story of Samson only a myth, or could it actually have occurred? Ruins of a temple similar to the one that Samson brought crashing down have been found at Tel Kasil, an archaeological site in the suburbs of present-day Tel Aviv.
On the Philistine layers of that site, there were significant structures, central structures of the village that were built in such a way that the whole upper floor of the structure would have been supported by pillars. Had a person the strength to push those pillars out of the way, it would have brought the entire structure down.
And yet this story that ends with so much death and destruction has a miraculous beginning. According to the Old Testament, the story begins in the village of Zorah in the hills above Jerusalem. It is here, sometime between the years 1200 and 1000 before the Common Era, that a poor shepherd named Manoah lives. His wife, who is unnamed in the story, has been childless for many years and yearns for a baby. One day, while she is working in the fields, an angel appears before her.
Look here. You have been barren and childless. But you will be pregnant, and you will bear a son. Judges 13:4.
This theme of a barren mother giving birth is, remember, a theme that touches very powerfully in an agricultural society. There is the sense of the barren field that all of a sudden springs crop, the barren womb that all of a sudden gives seed, and that's part of the divine promise.
The angel tells the woman that her son will be a champion who will liberate Israel from the hands of its enemy, the Philistines. The angel instructs the woman to raise the boy as a Nazirite, referring to the elite corps of warriors who live by strict rules of ritual purity.
To be promised to the Nazirite means this is a child and eventually a man who will have to reject much of this world in order to be spiritually true to the God who chose him. That has profound impact on the way someone not only is raised, but how they feel about themselves.
Nazirites vow not to eat unclean food or drink alcohol, believing these acts of self-denial will endow them with superhuman strength. They also single themselves out by vowing never to cut their hair.
What is the significance of long hair? Long hair is uncut hair. Long hair is unshorn hair. Barbering is an affectation of culture. It's something people do. Animals don't cut their hair. Samson's long hair is symbolic of his connection to nature and to the power of nature.
Samson lives according to this ascetic code, not because he has chosen it, but because his parents force him to obey the instructions given by the angel. He seems dissatisfied with its restrictions.
I would not be surprised if Samson was a rebellious teenager, pushing not only against the boundaries of the society at the time, but pushing against the special boundaries that his own parents' promise had put him in.
As Samson matures, the extraordinary nature of his physical power becomes evident.
It's as if Samson has something beating inside him. He's walking around with this restlessness. There is this sense, Samson's going to be different. There's something pounding, beating, agitating inside of him.
Samson leaves the safety of his own tribe and crosses the border into the forbidden territory of the Philistines. For nearly 200 years, the Philistines have dominated Israel. Samson's people, members of the tribe of Dan, live in a region that is immediately adjacent to the territory of the Philistines. Of all the tribes, the Danites have managed to maintain the friendliest relations with their more powerful neighbors. When Samson arrives at the gates of the Philistine town of Timnah, he has what may be his first glimpse of city life.
Timnah would have been an interesting place at the time of Samson. It was famous for its copper mines. So going to visit Timnah probably would have been, going to the big city, as it were.
Among the sights that captivate Samson in the land of the Philistines is a beautiful woman. Again, the Bible does not give this woman a name. Although his encounter with her is fleeting, Samson returns to his parents and makes a demand as disturbing in ancient times as it is for many today: an interracial marriage.
His father and mother said to him, "Is there no woman among the daughters of your brotherhood, or among all my force, that you must go get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" Judges 14:3.
It must have been a sense of real religious and in some ways ethnic horror to the tribe of Dan, struggling so hard to make their way in this borderland country. To see this very man who's supposed to be more pure than the average Israelite, to see him doing the wild thing and being so outrageous as to love a woman of the foreign country.
Samson is not to be deterred. Is it lust, love, or some other motivation that draws Samson to the Philistine woman?
To marry the Philistines was to marry into a more powerful world and a more glamorous world. And we might imagine that to a Samson, impressionable and ambitious as he was, a Philistine woman would seem a much more attractive conquest than an Israelite.
However, Samson's attraction to the Philistine woman may be motivated by an altogether different source. According to the Old Testament, God is looking for an opportunity to disrupt the uneasy peace between the Israelites and their Philistine neighbors.
Now his father and mother did not realize that it originated with the Lord, that he was looking for some occasion to move against the Philistines. Judges 14:4.
The Lord is seeking to pick a fight with the Philistines. Samson is to enter Philistia and destroy things, even though he is unaware that that's his destiny.
In the years to come, the Jews will rise up to overthrow their Philistine oppressors and claim the land they believe God has promised them. Some experts think the Samson story may mark the dawning of this new era. Samson returns to Timnah to claim his bride. While passing through a vineyard, he hears a ferocious roar. Suddenly, a lion is upon him. What for an ordinary man would be a fatal encounter is, for Samson, proof of his strength. Calling upon the Spirit of God, he tears the beast apart with his bare hands. His nearly supernatural physical power has made itself felt for the first, but not the last time. Strangely, in the days to come, the lion's corpse will play a crucial role in igniting savage conflict between Samson and the Philistines. In defiance of his parents' wishes, Samson has chosen to marry a Philistine woman. Once more, he crosses into Philistine territory. By the roadside, he spies the body of the lion he killed not long before. It is now swarming with bees, and on closer inspection he discovers an extraordinary phenomenon. The lion's carcass is full of honey. Soon after, Samson's wedding feast begins in Timnah.
I believe this marriage is like any mixed marriage. The families are not wildly enthusiastic. The partners may have some genuine feeling and passion for each other, but in the midst of their social circumstances, it's a difficult love to see prosper.
In an atmosphere fraught with tension, Samson challenges his guests with a riddle.
It's very possible that riddle contests were part of Philistine culture. Samson goes to the wedding feast, and when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
They said to him, "Propound your riddle. Let's hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet." Judges 14:14.
The thing about this riddle is that it isn't solvable through any mental adroitness. There is no pun or internal clue that would help anyone solve it. You would have had to have been an eyewitness to a very extraordinary and arbitrary event.
Samson promises to outfit each of his guests in 2 expensive robes if they can solve his puzzle. Confident that they will not succeed, Samson turns to the bridal chamber and the beautiful young woman who awaits him. Now, in a plot that foreshadows the later betrayal by Delilah, the Philistines approach his wife.
The Philistines are urban tricksters. They're the Sharpies. And so they threaten Samson's bride. They threaten to kill her and her family if she doesn't find out the secret to his riddle.
As was the custom in the ancient Near East, Samson's wedding celebrations last 1 week. During the days of lovemaking, Samson's bride tries to coax the answer from him.
She nagged him. She pressured him. And the word there in Hebrew is a form of tsuk, and it means to be narrow. And the image is that she squeezed him. Samson doesn't like to be hemmed in. He doesn't like to be fenced in.
Finally, Samson succumbs and tells his bride about the honey he found in the carcass of the lion. Soon after, the Philistines confront him with the answer to his riddle and demand their reward.
Samson isn't used to losing. Samson probably never lost as a young man. And suddenly, not even because he's been bested, but because he's been betrayed, he's lost. And as we might expect, the reaction is violent and explosive.
To get the robes he needs to pay his debt, Samson goes to another city and kills 30 other Philistines.
He sparks this chain reaction of violence. God is planting Samson in urban culture, like the Trojan horse, so that he can raise hell and destroy things.
When he returns to Timnah with the robes, his father-in-law informs him that his marriage has been annulled. His bride has been married off to his best man. Furious, Samson commits what could be construed as an act of war.
Samson went away and caught 300 jackals. He took torches, turned them tail to tail, and put one torch between each pair of tails. When he had set fire to the torches, he drove them into the Philistines' standing grain and burned everything. Judges 15:4.
In someone who reacts out of primal emotion like Samson, it is hard to figure out, is he fighting a just battle against an enemy, or is he just exploding from his own sense of rage and his own desire to flex his power and his muscle? And with Samson, it seems to be both. There are grievances against the Philistines, but you get a sense in his reaction of the savage exuberance of a young man who discovers that he's not only the toughest guy on the block, he's the toughest guy in the land.
With an army of Philistines at his heels, Samson retreats into territory occupied by Israelites from the tribe of Judah. Surprisingly, they do not offer Samson sanctuary.
Then they said, "We have come down here to tie you up, to surrender you to the Philistines." Judges 15:12.
We have a very unusual element to this story where Samson is such a threat to his own people that they literally turn him over to the Philistines in order to preserve themselves from inviting conflict with the Philistines.
And the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then God's Spirit empowered him. The ropes on his arm became like flax that is set on fire, and the bonds disintegrated from his hands. Judges 15:15.
There are several places in the Samson story where it says, literally, the breath of the Lord overpowers Samson, and he goes into this martial rage.
Samson grabs an unlikely weapon. It is the jawbone of an ass.
And Samson said, "With the donkey jawbone 1 heap, 2 heaps. With the donkey jawbone I laid low a contingent." Judges 15:16.
Again, Samson escapes into the wilderness. He is now a wanted outlaw, hunted by both the Philistines and the men of Judah. Time and time again, the Bible tells us, Samson is driven by his excessive appetites for violence and adventure. Seemingly unconcerned by the danger of returning to hostile territory, Samson once again enters a Philistine stronghold. This time it is the thriving metropolis of Gaza. Perhaps still heartsore over his disastrous marriage, Samson seeks the satisfaction of uncomplicated sex and visits a prostitute.
The story of the prostitute shows us again that Samson was a creature of his appetites and lusts. which is something that we have already known, but the story hammers it in again and again and again.
When it was told to the Gazites, Samson has come here, they gathered around and waited in hiding for him all night in the city gate. They kept quiet all night thinking, when daylight arrives, we will kill him. Judges 16:1.
At midnight, Samson leaves the woman's bed. On his way out of town, he rips the enormous city gates from their moorings, carrying them off on his shoulders.
Samson is no role model for today's youth. Samson is the kind of guy who, after spending the night with a woman, can get up and still has the strength to carry the city gates away on his shoulders. It's just one more example of his larger-than-life potency and strength.
And yet this man who causes so much trouble is elevated to a position of authority. At a time when Israel was not yet united under the rule of one king, charismatic individuals were sometimes given the power to settle disputes and lead their tribes into battle. These tribal leaders were called judges.
That's not a very good translation, really, because it calls up black robes and courtrooms and things. But really, what they are temporary military heroes. The text suggests that there was a person, male or female, on whom the Spirit of God descended, and they would sort of rise up and gather up some of the peoples of the various tribes, and they would organize themselves in a kind of peasant militia. They would put down the threat, and then essentially they would put down their spears and pick up their hoes and go back to farming.
In spite of his shortcomings, we are told that Samson was called upon to serve as a judge for more than 20 years.
He certainly doesn't act like he's particularly and uniquely dedicated to God. He seems to, in fact, go out of his way to do things that are almost insulting to God and to his people.
Why would the people of Israel honor such a man as Samson? Scholars suggest that in a time as difficult as the one in which Samson lived, the readiness to do violence may have been admired, even rewarded.
This is a story from the frontier days. Samson personifies this whole era of lawlessness, of anarchy, of taming the frontier. This is this transition period in which this age of warriors, of heroes, is going to eventually give way to a settled time.
However, some scholars suggest that Samson never really served as a judge. They believe that the writers of the Bible may have named him a judge as an afterthought, in an attempt to depict him in a more positive light.
There is a sort of instability to his character that is suggested by some of these episodes, that you can only sort of praise in retrospect.
It may be that it is only in a later period, long after the Israelite people have defeated the superior military might of the Philistines, that Samson's assaults against the enemy are seen favorably. Despite his role as judge, Samson continues his rambunctious ways. Shortly after his escapade in Gaza, Samson goes to the nearby Vineyard Valley. It is here that he encounters the one woman who is named in the story. A name which will be tied to his for all eternity: Delilah. In a place known as the Vineyard Valley, Israel's fiercest warrior comes face to face with a power that rivals his own brute force: the power of love.
The Samson story is one version of one of the oldest and most persistent stories that people tell. It's the story of a wild man being domesticated, tamed, civilized, humanized, whatever term you want to use, through the love of a woman. Beauty and the Beast.
Once again, Samson is drawn to the thrill of forbidden love.
Samson is a man who loves women who are of the wrong background. And so we have to think that Delilah is in some ways foreign. Even though the text does not specifically say that she is Israelite, Philistine, or Canaanite.
The Samson story becomes a prime example for the Israelites in a later period of the dangers of mixing with foreigners, and particularly the dangers of being enticed by the foreign woman.
The Bible tells us little about Delilah, only that from the moment they meet, Samson is smitten. Samson's attachment to Delilah is different from all his previous relationships. Not only does the Bible name her, but it also uses the word love to describe Samson's feelings for her.
We don't know whether they are married, but it is interesting that the relationship is more than a one-night stand for Samson. It appears to be a continuing relationship.
I'm actually impressed that Samson and Delilah seem to do as much talking as they do. This is not the pattern that you would expect between a man and a prostitute, certainly. It is a pattern you would expect between a man and his companion. That is someone that he is interested in talking to.
Word soon spreads that Delilah is involved with the most wanted outlaw of ancient Palestine. Much as the men of Timnah did when trying to learn the answer to Samson's riddle, the Philistines pay a visit to Delilah. Instead of threats, they offer her wealth.
The Philistine tyrants approached her and said to her, "Entice him. Find out how his strength became great, and how we can overcome him and tie him up to torture him." Judges 16:5.
The Philistines offer Delilah 1,100 shekels of silver if she can learn the source of Samson's superhuman strength.
They're offering her the equivalent of millions and millions of dollars to do this job. It's hard to imagine any woman who would not have felt more secure having that amount of money at her disposal. And we certainly know that women's status does better when they have their own bank accounts, as it were.
Delilah said to Samson, "Please, tell me the secret of your great strength, and how you might be tied up, that one could torment you." Judges 16:6.
Much as his wife had done, Delilah presses him repeatedly to tell her his secret. It is a dangerous game. If Samson discovers Delilah's duplicity, he will surely take her life.
One of the incredible things about Delilah that strikes me is that she is not intimidated at all by Samson's strength. She knows there's a way to defeat that strength.
She said to him, "How can you say I love you when you do not trust me? These 3 times you have teased me and have not told me what is the secret of your great strength." Judges 16:15.
It is Delilah's accusation that Samson does not really love her that stings him, forcing him to divulge his secret.
He said to her, "A razor has never touched my head, for I have been God's Nazarite from conception. If I were to be shaved, my strength would leave me. I would become weak and be like every human being." Judges 16:16.
In one of the most poignant scenes in the Bible, Samson lays his head on Delilah's lap and falls into a peaceful sleep. It will be the last peaceful sleep he will ever know. As Samson sleeps in Delilah's arms, his hair now cut short, he does not know that the Philistines are gathered outside her door.
When she said, "Philistines are on you, Samson," he awoke from his sleep and said, "I'll go out and shake myself free." Judges 16:20.
As the soldiers rush in, Samson rises to stop them, but to his astonishment, he is easily overcome. The Philistines bind his arms, and in an act of exquisite cruelty, gouge out his eyes.
In the ancient world, as unfortunately in the modern world, conquerors are often not satisfied with merely conquering. They must also somehow humiliate the defeated. They must somehow try to praise their own culture and their own identities by ridiculing and humiliating the identities and cultures of someone else, particularly a defeated people.
Samson is dragged from Delilah's house and thrown into prison. Here he is put to hard labor, grinding grain.
Samson being yoked to the mill to grind grain for the Philistines is a great humiliation. He's been treated like an animal, if you will. Because now, instead of being the wild man who kills the lion and is living on honey, now he has actually become a beast of burden.
But Samson may not have been literally grinding grain.
When it says that Samson was made to grind, the later interpreters had a lot of fun with that because the verb to grind, tohen, can be a euphemism for sexual intercourse. There's a tradition that when Samson is grinding here, basically he's being put out to stud by the Philistines. And lo and behold, that's why in a few stories later in the Bible, you get Philistine giants.
According to ancient Jewish legend, these Philistine giants sired by Samson may have included Goliath, who would be pitted against the boy King David in later chapters of the Bible. As for Delilah, after Samson is imprisoned, she disappears from the story, never to be heard from again. We are left to wonder if, having robbed him of his strength and freedom, she felt any pity for Samson. Did she perhaps still harbor some affection for her hapless victim?
It would be interesting to speculate if Delilah had any regrets as a result of her betrayal of Samson. I think it's possible to say, however, that she had removed a threat to her people, that she believed that she had accomplished a job well done.
I wonder if sometimes we are too quick to condemn Delilah. Why couldn't we see Delilah as the Philistine version of this warlike woman who fights on behalf of her people? Perhaps she really is a woman with a mission.
As for Samson, as the agonizing days of his captivity pass, his hair begins to grow, and with it his extraordinary strength. The Philistines are unaware that Samson's power is returning. During a festival dedicated to their god Dagon, they parade Samson through the streets of Gaza and put him on display in their temple. Samson is humiliated before thousands of jeering spectators. His ears ring with their derisive laughter. The Philistines do not know he is no longer the man they captured. He has undergone a transformation.
We understand that it is not until he's blinded that he can see. As long as he is a creature ruled by his sensual appetites, which include sight and hearing and touch, he is really blind. But the moment they're taken away from him, he all of a sudden realizes what the true order and nature of things is, and he turns to God.
Standing with his arms braced against the pillars of the temple, Samson pleads for one last burst of strength.
Then Samson cried out to God, "Lord God, please remember me. Please strengthen me. Just this once, God. Let me deliver myself with one deliverance, on account of my 2 eyes, from the Philistines. Let me die with the Philistines," and pushed with all his might. Judges 16:30.
With a thundering roar, the columns tumble, and the temple building collapses. Everyone, including Samson himself, is crushed beneath the rubble. With this final cataclysmic act of self-sacrifice, Samson has struck a devastating blow against the enemy.
Those whom he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his lifetime. Judges 16:30.
Samson completed his mission. Samson killed a lot of the enemy. Samson's job was to be a terminator, and he did it.
And in so doing, Samson has ushered in a new era, an era that will ultimately culminate in the defeat of the Philistines, giving the Israelites control of the Promised Land. Samson has fulfilled the role assigned to him by God.